Hello, I'm Susan King. I'm the Dean of the School of Journalism and Mass Communication here at UNC Chapel Hill, and I'm very pleased to welcome our Nelson Benton Lecturer for this year, Jerry Baker.
Thank you very much.
The executive editor, or everyone's got new titles, executive editor of the Wall Street Journal.
Editor-in-chief.
Editor-in-chief.
Yeah,
well, that's an old-fashioned title.
And managing editor. Yeah.
Kind of you like that, I bet.
There are, as you say, there are different titles. Different organizations have different titles for the same job, but yes, it means that in the end I'm the one who is responsible for good or ill of what appears in the paper.
That's right. So you're the one who gets the other end of the phone when they love it or hate it.
Exactly.
Well, it's at least not chief content officer,
No.
which is a new
We haven't
phrase.
gone there yet.
Yeah, not yet. And we'll talk maybe a little bit later about what that means. But I wanted to start out that the Wall Street Journal, storied newspaper, I would say one of the three national newspapers still standing and standing strong. And I would like your perspective in this time of incredible economic turbulence, if not news turbulence, why you think the Wall Street Journal remains so strong. Is it because it has such a defined audience, business, or is it because you're behind the payroll? You made people pay for your content.
Well, I'd like to think it's a number of things. I think it is that the Journal has, first and foremost, I think truly the most trusted brand in journalism, in business journalism in particular. And we've looked at this and we've surveyed people and we've established this over a very long period of time. The Journal has been published, we're in our 125th year this year. And a newspaper that has established a reputation for that over that period of time for reliable, objective, fair, accurate journalism, I think is what people want, and what is that's demonstrated in the fact that we are the best-selling paper in the United States, that we're growing globally, that we're growing in the United States too. So I think that's primarily the reason. We have a great audience. We do cover business primarily, although not exclusively, and we have a very broad reach, and we've broadened that reach in the last few years. But I think above all else it's about trust.
Okay, you didn't mention paywall though.
Look, we established the paywall before anybody else,
Right.
back in 1996 when the internet came along. It was interesting. When everybody else was putting the newspapers available online for free, the people who ran the Wall Street Journal back then, long before my time, said, we're not going to let people have this for free. We don't give the paper away for free in print. Why would we give it away digitally for free?
But it was very controversial when Peter Kahn did that.
It was a very bold decision, but I think now it looks like exactly the right decision. Other newspapers have steadily followed suit after a long period of time, and I think to be honest, the failure of many newspapers to charge early on for their digital journalism did enormous damage, both to those newspapers themselves, and I would argue to the business of journalism, and and if not to the actual integrity of journalism, then to the financial integrity of journalism. I think it was really undermined by the fact that it became seen as something that was just available for free. News was available for free. Why on earth should anybody have to pay for it? Well, you have to pay for it because it's expensive to produce and it's a valuable good.
But the big debate, I think, with the Wall Street Journal and its economic model is that, yes, you've got a wide readership, and I want to talk about that, but the main folks who really can't get through the day without the Wall Street Journal are people who want that different edge because they're making money, and you give them information they maybe can't get anywhere else. But they're a moneyed audience, right?
Well, actually, our numbers indicate that the audience is mixed. So we do have a large number of subscribers who, yes, work in business in some way and who take the Wall Street Journal because they see it as somehow a valuable tool for their business. That's true, probably over half of our readership, of our circulation. But actually we have a huge number of readers, especially in the last 5 years, when we have dramatically broadened the appeal of the Wall Street Journal. We've added much more to the Journal than just the core business news. We have a huge number of readers who now come read the Journal, who don't read it necessarily as a business tool, but who read it because they feel it gives them better, more comprehensive, more reliable, more objective coverage of the major, not only news stories, but features, commentary, and everything else they're looking for. So yeah, we've got at our core, we've got a business audience that relies on the Journal, but we've steadily built out from that core to a much bigger audience that reads the Journal because it likes what it reads.
So give me some of the facts, the sort of daily readership and how that breaks down between businessmen and
So we don't publish the detailed numbers in terms of the internal surveys, but the total circulation of the Journal is just over 2.25 million
nationwide
daily circulation, actually just in the United States. Yeah, we also sell about another probably another 150,000 globally. So we're close to 2.5 million globally, but that's our core circulation. Of that, again, we don't publish the breakdown of other of who subscribes, and also it's hard to say to some extent who's subscribing, because someone may subscribe because they work for a bank. Doesn't necessarily mean they're subscribing because they work for a bank.
Focus groups or something, because you wouldn't keep broadening it if you didn't think you had.
Yeah, well, we think we built our audience out in the lot. We think now a significant proportion of our audience, again, we don't give the numbers, but a significant proportion of our audience is now, is now, if you like, a sort of a regular newspaper readership. Again, but it's this, Susan. It's very hard to break down. As I say, if someone works for a bank and they subscribe to the Wall Street Journal, are they subscribing to the Wall Street Journal because they work for a bank? I mean, you probably wouldn't. You probably would object if I said they were subscribing to the New York Times because they work for a bank. I mean, I can't give you a precise answer to that. No,
well, I watched the change 5 years ago because I lived in New York, and so when you get on the subway, which is another thing, you don't see everyone reading the Wall Street Journal.
Right.
When I got on my bus into Manhattan with the financial guys, they were all reading it. They switched to the app, however, so it was going digital.
Right.
So you do get some of the change in a city that has a lot of diversity of kind of thoughts. But there was 5 years ago a real mark to compete with the New York Times is at least the word on the street. Is that so?
Well, I'm not sure we were trying to compete. I think we felt that the Journal could reach a much larger audience. We felt that if you look at, and especially coming from, taking an international perspective on this, coming from the United Kingdom, which has a lot of newspapers, the major newspapers in the United Kingdom have a much larger circulation as a share of the population than the major US newspapers. If you look at it, something like, so take the Times of London, which is broadly comparable to the Wall Street Journal in terms of its kind of, if you like, in terms of the quality of its news and the kind of news that it covers. The Times of London reaches about 500, has a circulation of about 500 to 600,000 now. That's in a country with a population of about a fifth of the United States. We have a circulation. And
many more newspapers in London.
Many more newspapers, absolutely, much more competition. We have in the US, the population, our circulation of the Journal rather is less than 4 times the Times of London for a country that's 6 times the size. So we just felt that, even in this era when people are full of angst about the future of newspapers, there was actually a potentially much larger audience of people who would be willing, who would find the Wall Street Journal engaging and readable and something they would use or want or need. And we decided that what we needed to do was to broaden its appeal and to expand the reach.
Well, and I did see you always had great culture, but you've done more culture, more fashion, more lifestyle.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, we've added a magazine, which has been very successful, both journalistically and commercially. We've added significant amounts of general news, political news, foreign news. We dramatically expanded our foreign news. As you say, culture. We added a whole weekend, 2 weekend sections. One review, which is about ideas, and another off duty, which is more consumer sort of focused. We added Arena, which is our Friday arts and entertainment supplement. We added a real estate section. We significantly overhauled Personal Journal, which is about essentially kind of lifestyle type issues, and we significantly expanded our arts and culture coverage too. So yes, we again, for me, it was very important that we not do that at the expense of our core business journalism, because I still believe that is the core mission of the Wall Street Journal and the core success, if you like, the route to success for the Wall Street Journal. But we really strongly believe that we could maintain that and reach a broader audience too. And again, I think we've been successful. One
of the things that I found interesting is, as you talk trust, and I agree with you, trust between a reader and the newspaper is critical. Once you lose that, you're in trouble. And so it's a critical relationship. But I think a lot of people, when the word objective, you used a lot, they think of the Wall Street Journal as having a really strong editorial voice.
Absolutely.
And objective may not be the word, because it's a great arguing voice, it has a point of view. And so many people go to it because they want that really rabid and pointed and passionate point of view, which is not objective.
Yeah, I wouldn't describe it as rabid personally, but
I think I'll take back that word myself.
I think well, there's no question. The Wall Street Journal's editorial pages are very conservative. They stand, as they say, for free people and free markets. They are very, very strident, if you like, and fervent and forthright in making that case. just by the way as the New York Times' editorial pages are very liberal, or frankly, most editorial pages in the country are pretty liberal. But we on the news pages have always believed that the right thing to do was to maintain a straight line with news, not to maintain objectivity, because, look, and part of the argument has always been with the Journal, you get two papers for the price of one. You get, if you want, and a lot of our readers do, let's be clear about that, want a conservative voice, want that distinct conservative voice that the editorial page represents. But in the rest of the paper, you get what we strive very strongly for, which is objective reporting. We don't take a political line in our reporting, whether it's our coverage of politics or culture or business or any of the aspect of our reporting. So we maintain it's kind of an objective line, while the editorial page obviously is absolutely free to pursue a much more argued and opinionated line.
But when you were saying some of the success is the objective, I think there's also a real audience for that passionate point of view. They feel they don't find it in other places, so they're very attracted to that. Do you have any sense of how powerful that is as a beacon for the paper? Very
significant. It's hard to put numbers on it, and we do some surveys, and they're not always necessarily completely reliable. But you can tell from, there is some quantitative evidence from things like the amount of traffic, for example, that goes to the opinion pages digitally, and that is quite often in the range of a third of our total traffic. We'll get major opinion articles. We'll get something of that order. So I tend to think that is. It's of roughly that, the readers who come to us for our editorial page, for what they like on our editorial page, primarily, is probably of roughly that proportion of the total newspaper. What I also hope, though, is that they come, and I believe, is that they come to the paper as well. So even though they may want that strongly argued editorial or that columnist that they particularly like, they stay with the Journal because they then read when we write about the economy or Obamacare or what's going on in China. We report that objectively. So they're getting, as well as getting their own views, if that's what they want, reflected in the opinion pages, they're also being exposed to, if you like, a more objective style of reporting in the news pages.
I'm happy to say that Peggy Noonan will be our Park lecturer this coming spring.
She's terrific. She's one of our, as you know, most popular columnists. Her columns are always extremely well read.
And a fabulous writer.
Very good writer.
We're thrilled to have her.
Yeah.
I sort of want to ask, there was so much talk about when Rupert Murdoch bought the paper, and you're one of the editors that has come in since Rupert Murdoch. There was great gnashing of teeth that the paper would be destroyed, or that the Murdoch of the Wall Street Journal would happen, which was not a positive phrase when it would be Murdoch. What difference has he made?
Well, I think the simple answer, I think I'm not just alone in saying this, I think it's become a better paper. The changes we made, there was always a lot of, as you say, gnashing of teeth. There always is whenever the name Rupert Murdoch is mentioned. There's a lot of people who don't like him, don't like his views, don't like what he stands for. But I think there was one misunderstanding was, look, Mr. Murdoch certainly has been associated with some of the most successful tabloid newspapers around the world, in the UK, the New York Post in the United States, other papers around the world. But he's also, over a long period of time, invested in great amounts of money in quality journalism. He established the Australian newspaper, as it's called, which is the primary quality newspaper in Australia with a significant audience. He bought the Times of London and the Sunday Times of London more than 30 years ago, and he invested huge amounts of money and still continues to invest huge amounts of money in those quality newspapers that are not tabloid newspapers, that deal with the big issues of the day in a more serious way. So there was always a rather one-sided view of Mr. Murdoch, that actually they thought about the tabloid rather than the quality journalism he'd been associated with. What he believed was necessary for the Journal was to absolutely maintain the quality of the Journal, maintain the quality of the journalism, maintain the objectivity of the news pages of the Journal, to invest in them, but to make the paper, to do two things. I think one, to broaden the appeal, which is what we've talked about, the growth of politics coverage and arts and entertainment and culture and leisure and sports and various other things. And he did that. And the other thing he did was, I think it's correct to say, and I certainly feel that this is part of what I've achieved. We've made the paper more newsy. The Journal used to be, it's always been a terrific newspaper without any question at all, but it didn't cover the news in the way that most traditional newspapers do. It would tend, actually, it would have brief summaries of the news,
right.
but it wouldn't, you'd often find days when there would be a major news story developing, and the Journal would have, 3 very long, very well reported, very, very, very lengthy pieces that had nothing whatsoever to do with the news of the day on the front page. We believe that in an age in which people are getting more and more news and are more and more attuned to the news and actually have less and less time, frankly, to read at leisure, we believe that it was more important to go down a more news track. That, at the same time, preserving the quality of the journalism that we do, and doing that investigative journalism, doing that deeply reported journalism that's a crucial part of what we do, but to bring, in a way, almost in a perfect marriage, the Journal's great reporting strengths to bear on the important big news of the day, so that you would get not just a simple recitation of the news that happened yesterday in the paper, but really good quality, deeper reporting. So when something happens in the Middle East or when something happens in the financial markets, you'll get that story, you'll get it in the Journal on that day. In fact, you'll get it digitally on that day, and then you'll read it in the paper the next day. But you'll get it done you'll get it reported in a more, if you like, more detailed, more deeply reported, more analytical way. And so we've made the paper newsier, and we've given it a broader appeal. That's been I think the 2 signal achievements.
People always love the great dramas of newspapers. So one of the, whether it's true or not, the stories that I was told after Mr. Murdoch bought the paper and clearly was investing it, was that it was going to be a head-to-head fight between the great New York Times and the great Wall Street Journal to see who in the end would win, because he did go to their territory,
right.
which they used to own, culture
right.
and
Right.
such. Is it that kind of clash of the titans that we're watching right now?
Obviously that's always slightly overstated, but Rupert Murdoch does love challenging the established order. I mean, everything he has done in his career that's been successful, and most of it has been successful, has been when he's taken on the established order, whether it was with newspapers in Australia where he started, against the established newspapers there. Then he came to the UK with a very well-entrenched newspaper culture. He bought a tabloid newspaper, then he bought the establishment newspapers, and he liked to fight the establishment and to make those papers competitive. He, of course, launched a television network in the UK before anybody thought that was ever possible. The UK was dominated by the BBC and ITV, and that was it. And he came in and established his television network to take on those established interests. He launched Fox News in the United States to take on what he thought the established news, the establishment in news. And so, yeah, he definitely, when he bought the Wall Street Journal, I think part of it was, here's an opportunity, even though the Wall Street Journal is obviously itself an important and established newspaper, but to take on some of the, bring in some competitive pressure into a market that, to be honest with you, for a long period of time, as terrific as American journalism has always been, it's lacked some of that competitive edge. And so I think he did want to do that, and I think to some extent we are doing that. And I think we're much more conscious now that we're in a competitive struggle, not just with the New York Times, but with other newspapers and with other news organizations. And that's part of what gives us energy and strength, and I think makes us better journalists.
And this will be the last question. You came out of the BBC, so you've been a television producer.
Right.
You've run the Washington Bureau for the BBC.
Right.
And there's a digital side of the Wall Street Journal where you're doing TV during
Right.
the day.
Right.
Is that also part of the competitive? Do you think
Yeah.
it's the 2 together? Do you think one is going to dominate the other, or?
That's a good question. I think it's exciting. I mean, that's what, to me, who started off in television, worked for 10 years in television, it's almost as though I've come full. I left because I wanted to write. I was keen to write, and I went to the Financial Times and wrote articles there. And now it's almost come full circle, because we do, thanks to digital journalism and digital distribution, we do now a lot of what other more established television organizations do. We do it on a much smaller scale, obviously, than the BBC does or any of the major US networks. But I think that is an increasingly important part of the digital offering of a newspaper. And so when we do really outstanding, terrific videos, whether they be news reporting out of Hong Kong on the protests that have been going on in Hong Kong, whether we do extraordinary documentaries, as we've done, we do sort of mini documentaries on everything from from returning war veterans from Afghanistan to great sort of documentaries about great sports events, or whether we just do interviews, live interviews and recorded interviews with people. Look, that is, again, as more and more people cut the cord, as they say, as more and more people rely less on that traditional television set in the corner where they're getting it from cable, and they're now looking increasingly on tablets or increasingly actually on smartphones. Yes, we can absolutely. We have the quality journalism, and we have increasingly the productive capability to produce high quality television. And yeah, I'm excited by that, and I'm keen to do more of it.
You're having a good time, aren't you?
Yes, it's a really
institution
exciting
making
time.
money.
Yeah, it is making money. It's, you know, I'd like to. Mr. Murdoch would like us to make more money. They all, everybody on the business side would. We're doing well. I mean, we're not. You know, again, we can do better. We've got bold, ambitious plans. Our current circulation is 2.25 million. We're aiming to get to 3 million over the course of the next few years, and we're optimistic that we can do that. So, look, everybody knows it's a challenging time for news. The core source of revenue in news, which was advertising, has diminished dramatically in the last 10 years, as you know, Susan, very, very well, especially for newspapers, especially in the print newspaper world. So that's been a big challenge for us. But we're excited about the opportunities that we have to grow our subscription, to grow our news organization through the various different ways we can do it, whether it be through video or whether it be through interactive, more interactive devices, if you like. Above all, though, it comes down to the quality journalism, and if we can continue to produce the best journalism, and I really passionately believe that, then I think we've got a great future, and I think we can grow, and I think we can make more money in the process.
And I'm going to leave it right there, because what could be better? We're developing new journalists. We want them to be the best. We still want them to get paid.
Exactly.
So I'm glad you're there and that it's going well. Thank you very much, Jerry Boyd, Baker, for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Susan.